Okay, we're reading Romans 5 from the Passion Translation, verse 10. I think that's verse 10. Let's see my cup from Edinburgh. Romans 5:10. So, if while we were still enemies, get the picture, God fully reconciled us to himself through the death of his Son. I want you to think about that. God fully reconciled us to himself through the death of his Son. Now, just because this is the way a lot of us still think, it's the way I grew up thinking, the way that I was taught it. You being born into this world, because of the choices you've made. You didn't have a choice in the choice. You chose badly. I mean, that's what I was taught. You had free choice, but you always chose the wrong. It sounded like I didn't have much choice. Choose the wrong, because the way I was born into this world. That's where I used to believe. That's where you're born in this world a sinner. You're gonna make bad choices, and because of them choices, buddy, there's hell to pay. Listen to what I'm trying to say. I had a good thought. I think it left me. I'm gonna read this again to you. It says, so if while we were still enemies, God fully reconciled us to himself through the death of his Son. Okay. A debt because of the way in which you were born into this world and the life that you've chosen to live. You owe a debt. A sin debt must be paid. For the wages of sin is death. And because you're a sinner and you've chosen to sin, there's a debt that you owe. Okay, let's say that's so. What we have here in this verse and in multiple others, what happened at the cross? And that's the way that I was taught it. There was a debt. Jesus paid the debt, made salvation possible. It's possible for you. He provided it, but you got to choose it. But listen to what it says. Okay, so thinking along that debt. If you owe a debt, and somebody comes along and pays that debt, do you still owe it? Think about it. Somebody comes along and pays off your house. Do you still owe the bank? Or are they sending you a title deed? Do you still owe them? Or are they going to send you the title? Why? Because the debt was paid, right? Okay. Now, that's just and righteous, right? I mean, you no longer owe the bank any money. They got to send you the title, right? That's just. The debt was paid. I don't like the illustration, but I hope you're getting the point. I'm going to read the verse to you again. You think about the debt that you owed. And what did Jesus accomplish at the cross? So if while we were still enemies, we still had that debt, we were obstinate in our indebtedness, he says, God fully reconciled us to himself through the death of his Son. So the debt has been paid. in full. How is God going to come along and say, you still owe me because you hadn't accepted my offer? Well, that's not what he did. He says that God was fully reconciled, has fully reconciled us to himself. He has fully embraced us. He has fully received us, even when we were enemies, even when we were lost in our sin. In our sin, and in our lostness, and in our wretchedness, our wickedness, God has reconciled us to himself. This is Romans chapter 5. The previous video, we were looking at 2 Corinthians chapter 5, talking about the same thing. God was in Christ, reconciling the world unto himself, not imputing their trespasses against them, not counting the debt against us. You want to know what happened at the cross? God was proving his love for you. God was proving his view of you is one that you are righteous. And God was reconciling you unto himself, showing you that he is for you. He is not against you. He loves you in spite of you. He says it right there. He's reconciled us to himself through the death of his Son. Then something greater, listen to it, then something greater than friendship is ours. Now that we are at peace with God, and because we share in his resurrection life, how much more we will be rescued from sin's dominion. So if we share in his death, we share in his life. Just like Adam. It was reversed in Adam. We shared in his life. We're his descendants. And we shared in his death because of the choice he made. But God views humanity no longer in the first Adam. There was one time we were in him. But since the last Adam, Jesus, all of humanity is seen, is counted, is in Christ, in the last Adam. And God was in the last Adam, fully reconciling the world unto himself. Let me read this to you. So if while we were still enemies, God fully reconciled us to himself through the death of his Son, then something greater than friendship is ours. Now that we are at peace with God, and because we share in the resurrection life, how much more we will be rescued from sin's dominion. So all that God has done in Christ and bringing us to himself and reconciling us and showing that we're righteous and proving his love, he's determined to deliver us from sin and its consequences, its dominion in our life. Notice verse 11, and even more than that, we overflow with triumphant joy in our new relationship of living reconciled to God, all because of Jesus.